Welcome, church, to our fourth installment of this 12-year-old boy Jesus at the temple. We find ourselves in verse 51 as we close out this series. Verse 51 tells us, "And he went down," he being Jesus, he's been found at the temple. And verse 51 says, "He went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart." I want you to notice that we just talked about in our last session that we have the very first recorded words of Jesus in this text. "Why are you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" And from that point on, everything changes, not only in this gospel, but for the entirety of the Bible, for the rest of the New Testament. Matter of fact, even in these verses, it's he went down and he went with them. So even the pronouns, the direct object here is back on Jesus rather than the parents. And that's important because once Jesus speaks in the story, in the book, the rest of the book becomes about him. So much so that Joseph by name will only be mentioned one more time in chapter 3, in the very next chapter of Luke. But not about a story of Joseph, but rather just mentioning his name and genealogy. And what really surprised me that I learned over the last 2 or 3 weeks was this. After this story here in Luke chapter 2, believe it or not, Mary the mother will not be mentioned again by name in the rest of this book. I can only suppose that one of the reasons for that, as we have said for the last 4 series, is this. This story ultimately is about him. And as he went back to Nazareth with his parents, he followed them and he submitted to them. Which causes me, as we conclude, to ask you, as I've asked myself, in what area of your life do you need to follow him? As we were early in the year of 2022, and some of us are still trying to make those final New Year resolutions for our lives, I would like to encourage you to ask 2 questions from this text. 1, where do I need to follow him? And 2, just as Jesus went and was submissive to his parents, where do I need to be submissive to him? What would submission look like in my life if I were to commit to that in 2022? You might notice that the backdrop of this video is different than the others. And there's a reason for that, is because behind me, I'm currently in the prayer room off the fellowship hall of our church building. And behind me is what is called a distraction board. And on that distraction board, here's what I would like to encourage you to do, is families, healthy families, pray together. And healthy families pray for one another. And it's one thing to know what we ought to do. It's one thing to know, hey, I would like to follow him here, and I would like to submit to him in this aspect of my life. But the reality is there are distractions in all of our lives that keep us from doing that as well as we should sometimes. So here's what I would like to do for you. I would like to pray for you in those distractions, pray against them, so that you and I can commit and be resolved to this issue of following him in 2022. So over the next weeks, I would like to encourage you, you can even do so unanimously. But behind me is this distraction board where you will find an index card and a pen. And I would like for you to come in, if you would, and just write down a distraction or 2 on a note card and pin it to the board behind me. And here's my commitment. I'll come in here several times a week and just look at the different notes, at the different distractions that have been placed there. And I will pray against those. So that in this year, just as Jesus went and followed his parents and were submissive to them, that you and I may be found faithful in the same thing. God bless you, church. It's been a pleasure to be with you.